So how do you create a sort of a marketing funnel, and how do these marketing funnel services work when it comes to LinkedIn? And please forgive me if you're out there and you are a growth marketer and you're doing this thing, you're an agency, and I have reduced it down and you're insulted. Just forgive me. That's not my intention. This is for teaching purposes only. And I'll explain how the system works and what's been effective for us. This is only my experience, my opinion, but I can say that I've gotten results. In fact, at this very moment, in actually 19 minutes, the team is going to get on a call to close a deal on one of these leads, right? And so I can say I've experienced the benefit of it. All right. So what you got to do is you have to figure out what the funnel is. And so you have to really first step, define your service, right? And when I say service, I am not all the details. You have to get very exact when it comes to this. So for example, when you say, oh, we're a growth marketing agency, well, what does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Like that could mean so many different things. You could be in a niche, you could be this, etc. Exactly what is that? And so you have to be very clear. So for example, in our situation, with our SaaS platform that leads to consultation, we say we analyze a company's culture and we use that culture to develop their marketing strategies. We're an inside out consultation company. So we're super clear on what we're doing, right? Define, you have to be exact, and you have to differentiate. So you have to be super clear on what makes you different. Differentiate. Okay. So that's how it works. Now, here's the next thing. Then what you do is you define, your target personas, right? And those live on LinkedIn. Man, I'm just not on my penmanship today. Personas. And so those live on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn. And the best part, the reason we like LinkedIn so much is from a B2B perspective, we know exactly what job titles, we know exactly where to target, the size of company, all this stuff. So we target. And then what we start doing is you start setting up the process. So what is the contact process? Okay, so the contact process is someone reaches out, hey, noticed. And this is where, Rush Marketing says, I forget what they call it. They said that you have to create something like a not passive aggressive, but let me just look up. I like the way that they put it. So they went and they beat us up on all our LinkedIn profiles, right? And then so what they did is they said you need a what is it? A politely aggressive message. Okay. That really nails the pain points. Right. So now I'm going to come up with the here, polite, aggressive. You want to be polite, but aggressive. And that is, what is the process to highlight their pain? So it's like a doctor. You press until it hurts. You're really good bedside manner, but you're like, does this hurt? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? And when they're like, ouch, that really hurts. Oh, you know what? You should book a consultation with me because I think I can solve that problem for you.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you need all the supporting collateral.
Yes. Okay.
So remember, what they're going to do is they're going to check you out. They're going to, you need all the supporting stuff for that to happen, for them to then, validate your credentials and all that stuff. And then what you do, after that, and we do huge amounts, you have to test, and test. So this is where, so what we did was we said, okay, so we tested we are a brand culture firm versus we're a brand communication firm, or
Got
a
it.
branding and communications firm. Which one's got more openings? Well, it turns out, even though people are looking for brand communications, the term brand culture was interesting to them. They're like, oh, this is really fascinating. And then the supporting collateral, we have a free assessment. You can try it for free, all these things. So or you can, download this or try that, etc. And you put them in the funnel and you test. And then you just start measuring and you figure out, okay, did this convert? Did that convert? etc. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're a growth marketing guy, and it's just setting out the funnel. So walk me through. Okay. So let's
Yeah.
do this as an exercise. Super quick. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your response so far? I see you kind
I
of.
was about to say, no, this is super funny that you literally wrote like this out, because I feel like I've done each of these, but then independent of each other. Like I I had the sales LinkedIn navigation, but then the process and contact and like communication was like probably not even anywhere where it needed to be. We didn't have the supporting collateral, but maybe we then had the target persona. I feel like we totally like misconnecting all of them, which is, I guess, yeah, your system here. But yeah, like if I were to define, the service, right? And the exact thing is, right, we're growing your conversion rate, right? So we're going to get your conversion rate from 1% to 2%. So like saying, have you hit 2% conversion rate? Yeah. Have you hit the industry standard of 2% conversion rate, which is what I would call polite aggressive, right? As far as the messaging, the target and personas, I definitely feel like we built a lot of those sales LinkedIn Navigator searches that perfectly fit, but then we were sending them the wrong messaging from LinkedIn.
Okay. Now
So
wait. No. So let's
yeah.
back up. So let me
Yeah.
just clearly identify. Now, when you say someone, you want to help them go from 1% to 2%, and I know the reason you're doing this, but you are assuming that there's a certain level of sophistication that they even know what 1% is. A lot of companies say, well, we know 50% of our digital marketing works. We just don't know which 50%, right? Like we were told just to do Facebook, so we just do Facebook, type thing.
Yeah.
So now what you're defining is we work with companies that have a certain level of sophistication, because their pain point might be we're at 1%. We keep throwing stuff against it and we can't double the conversion rate, right? So these are some clear factors. And this is what helps in talking it through and pointing that out, because you might be targeting the wrong persona until you defined that we work with companies that already have existing metrics in place. They understand, they're a bit more savvy, et cetera. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's going to denote a certain size of company, maybe a company who's got a certain type of social media, all this stuff within your vein, because
Yeah.
part of defining your service is how you solve the problem. And you say, we really use influencers, right? So you're not going to go contact a company that, only does billboards or QR codes or, things like that, or AR or VR, et cetera, et cetera. So now you know the target personas. And so what has been the process to contact them?
That's where it's kind of been all over the place, and none of them seem to have worked. But like LinkedIn outreach, email outreach, as in like trying to pull emails from LinkedIn using a add-on called Wizza. But yeah, like basically just pulling down emails and LinkedIn messages and just kind of like mass blasting those, which didn't work. So
Yes.
yeah, I think though, yeah.
That's the problem with LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become just filled with spam, and I can't stand it. I know exactly when someone is tossing in canned messages, right? But when someone actually sends me something and says, hey, we noticed you're this, or we noticed you're that, I'll actually respond, because I'll be like, oh, you know what, I'm interested. Because if you've identified an opportunity for me to grow or a pain point, then yeah, I want to listen. Yeah, it'd be foolish not to listen. But when I get just regular spam messages and it has nothing to do with me, I'm just like, F off, right? Like I just start getting desensitized to it. So that's where figuring out what is the politely aggressive message. And what's great about the in-mail, like you don't have to be friends with them on the in-mail. And then if they respond, you can make a connection, but then they'll just automatically check you out if your message is compelling, which is the reason you got to test all the messages. You got to test what that opening line is. And, there are certain formulas, but, like just, the other day, I don't know. Have you seen that show Suits? With
I actually haven't. I heard it's great though.
The guy's like, and so they're they're trying to hire lawyers from Harvard, but the main lawyer, he's sick and tired of just stuffy students. So he tells his assistant, when they come in, say something snarky, give them a rough time. And if they give you a clever response, then give me a wink, right? And I'll know whether, and he'll just make a decision whether he wants to interview or just give them like the standard answer, right? And so people, she would give this one guy a hard time, and he'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late, all this stuff. And she'd be like, no, this is not the person. So they had a system on what opening line they wanted to hear that got their attention. Every client's like that, and you're not going to have the same thing for each client. So let me give you an example. I built my agency on, so here's what I did. So I would take someone's ad, and I was going into digital, right? I would take someone's ad out of a swanky newspaper or magazine, and I would mark up that ad in red pen, saying, this is a terrible headline, no call to action, all this stuff, right? I would call the company. I would say, excuse me, I noticed your ad in this magazine. May I ask who makes the advertising decisions? The gatekeeper's like, they throw out the name. So then I would throw the ad in with the red pen, and I would say, you get a 1 out of 10 and all this stuff. And then I would put in a letter, and it was personally hand addressed to that individual. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would put a letter saying, we decided to do this with your ad, and we can help you. And then I attached a lottery ticket for $1. And I said, you might as well be throwing your entire ad budget into lottery tickets, because you're going to get better results, probably. Right?
That's awesome.
So then I would mail, and I had an assistant on lock, and she would go get the magazines. She'd photocopy the ad, put them to me. I would mark them up in red pen, and then I would just give it to her, and she'd stuff the envelopes and then get the lottery tickets. Okay. Then people would call me, or we'd follow up, and I would follow up and say, hey, and I would ask for the person, I just want to know, did you get my package about your ad? And some would go off, how dare you send me that? I have a marketing degree, blah, 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 blah. Right. And I would be like, oh, well, I just have a question for you. How's it working for you? What's your conversion? Like, what's your ROI on that ad? They'd either hang up the phone or blah, blah, you're such a punk, and, all this stuff. But then I would have some clients, I would call them, and they'd be like, you know what? We never had someone point all this stuff out to us, and we want you to come in. And so then I would say, here's what I do. If you spend $5,000 on that ad, you give me that $5,000 and I'll put it to work, and I will measure the ROI on that without advertising. And then I had a process. I said, give me a percentage of the increase of business that I did. This is how I got myself in the market. Right. And then, so if I took that $5,000 and suddenly, I made them $15,000, well, they would give me $5,000 plus another $5,000 to keep doing it over and over again. Right. That's how I made a name for myself in the local ecosystem when it comes to becoming marketing. But it was all in a system, like boom, boom, boom. And that's the problem with founders, is they get bored with their own system, and they're like, let me try this and let me try that. Once we had that, it was like turning a tap on and off. We would just turn it on if we needed it. We turn it off if we didn't need the business, or we would start targeting and doing different experiments with different companies. And then we would try different collateral pieces. And then next thing you know, I was just getting word of mouth. Like, as soon as someone said, we don't know if our advertising working, contact Ed. He does this stuff without advertising, direct response marketing, and I would get referrals. So that's how you start to experiment and put in a system, because most founders, what they do is they say, they don't go through the pain of developing the system, and they say, so we need to hire a salesperson. And I don't know if anybody here in office hours has experienced trying to hire salespeople, good ones. Most of them are so full of BS. It's not even funny. Alex, you've had experience with freelancers and agencies, right?
Yeah, it's been more than painful.
Exactly.
Bad.
But the problem is, you're asking them to create a system for your company that you know better than anybody. So first, figure out what works for you, then hire, and I don't want to, degenerate people, but hire anybody that can just turn the crank like a monkey on a music box that just does this, and the sausages come out, type thing. You save money, and then you can find that salesperson who comes in and outperforms, and then can innovate the system a little bit, but at least the foundations of how to start your system.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Where can I get the recording of this?
You recording? Okay, I'm going to post it to you right now. I'm stopping the recording.